Communication and influence, two superpowers for quality and compliance leaders. Our speaker today is Jerry Shafran of YouCompli. At this time, all lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. We will have a Q&A period at the end of the presentation. Type your question using the question pane at the right of your screen. Please identify the name of your organization at the beginning of your entry. Today's materials can be downloaded from the webinar's handout section. To view that section, click on the small orange arrow at the top of your screen to expand the menu. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the CIHQ ARS Partner Webinar page within a couple of business days. It's now my pleasure to turn the conference over to our speaker, Jerry Shafran. Jerry, you have the floor.
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon. It's a Monday morning. A compliance officer goes into the cafeteria to put their lunch in the refrigerator and grab a cup of coffee. While they're there, a second person joins them, but there's no real interaction, no conversation. Shortly, a third person joins, and the second and third person begin talking. How was your day? How was your weekend? Pleasantries, kids, things of that nature. The whole time, not talking to the compliance pro. Shortly after that, this all breaks up. The compliance person goes back to their office and sits and thinks about this interaction or the lack of interaction. They don't feel good about it. They don't feel like they're part of the team. They don't feel valued. What I just did is I started off this presentation with storytelling. Storytelling is a tool that people use, and you should use, to be an effective communicator and influence people. That story may resonate with you, it may not. If you're in the compliance function, it probably does. If you're purely in quality, it may not resonate with you as much. But the point is that storytelling is an important part of communicating and influence. If you're on this webinar today, you're hoping to improve yourself, you're hoping to get better at your role, you're hoping to gain new roles and grow your leadership skills. This concept of communication and influence are really, really important if those are your goals. We're going to talk about some other superpowers here today, but our webinar is on communication and influence, two of the superpowers that each and every one of you can use to become more effective at what you do. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to start with why communication and influence matters. And we're going to talk mostly about soft skills. We're then going to go into tips and strategies. We're then going to move into influence. We're then going to give you some KPIs. These concepts are not easy to measure. They can be very, very difficult to measure. You know the old saying, if I can't manage it, if I can't measure it, I can't manage it. So we're going to give you some specific ways that you can measure how well you're communicating and influencing within your organization. We're going to throw a couple of bonus superpowers at you that I feel extremely strongly about, give you a little bit of homework, and then open it up for QA. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with what are soft skills and hard skills. So hard skills, which are on our left, tend to be technical in nature. They're often measurable. They're things that you can learn how to do, and you can usually be tested on them. I have some examples up there: interpreting a CMS condition of participation, and conducting and holding an internal audit, writing policies and procedures. Another skill that is often considered a hard skill is your proficiency on a computer, the ability to do different things with the technology that you're forced to use. I use that term because we're all in the technology world today. So that's another hard skill. Soft skills are things that are more people-centric. They are tools that you use to influence, lead, and interact with others. A couple of examples there: active listening, communicating clearly and calmly, even in situations that are stressful, building trust and credibility. These are ways, these soft skills are ways that you can communicate and influence and lead. We're going to focus the lion's share of our time today on soft skills. The best thing that I found on the internet that for me really resonated when I'm thinking about skill sets and how to differentiate between hard skills and soft skills was hard skills help you get it right and soft skills help you get it done. For whatever reason, when I saw this really resonated with me. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, because I started with a story, I want to thank the CIHQ for the opportunity to present this webinar today. I realize I'm a little late with that housekeeping thing, but I really want to thank CIHQ. Michelle is just an absolute wonder to work with. We enjoy her working with her organization and her immensely. And we want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time today to hopefully get a little bit of skills and some knowledge and understanding that you can put into practice throughout your organization. I did forget about that. I need to do that. So, okay, I'm sitting here telling you that soft skills are important. What makes me an expert? Why does my opinion matter? Well, candidly, it's not. It does not. My opinion related to soft skills and the need for leadership and leaders to have soft skills and be constantly working on making those better, my opinion doesn't matter. A simple Google search will turn up literally thousands of examples where organizations are talking about, whether it's blogs or white papers or webinars, talking about how important soft skills are. The skills that leaders use to work with large groups, to collaborate, to influence, to move groups of people to follow. These soft skills are critically important. And this slide shows you just a couple of examples. We've got Deloitte on the left that had 3 articles, looking harder for soft skills in the C-suite. Next, closing the employee skills gap and a new approach to soft skills development. Harvard Business Review, Gartner. For those of you who are not familiar with Gartner, Gartner is a very large organization that does a lot of work with different companies and organizations recommending firms for lots of different aspects. The point is, I'm not the only one saying that soft skills are something that's important. I'm not sure if any of you know a coach, a business coach. Probably about 15, 20 years ago, business coaching became a thing to where people are actually, this is their job, this is their career, is working with individuals who want to build leadership, who want to grow in their career and get better at what they do. When you go out and talk to coaches, and I have talked to many, I actually did have a coach several years ago, probably 10 years ago now. That coach worked with me almost exclusively, as most coaches do, on soft skills. So there's really a whole industry around the soft skills concept. So let's go ahead and get started with some of the actual, what we're here to talk about. I guess we're here to talk about soft skills too, but so let's start with communication. And communication is obviously a massive undertaking and a massive field. But there are a couple of basic concepts that each and every one of us needs to be aware of, think about, and put actions and activities in process to try to get better at it. The first one is to know yourself. This may be one of the hardest ones. Each one of us has a communication style and a communication method that we're comfortable with, that we're confident with, that we feel we project the best of ourselves when presenting. So it's probably most important that you start by evaluating the communication style that you are most comfortable with. Now, there is quite a bit of literature out there about different communication styles. I apologize if I might lean forward. There's a sun. That's why I'm so far back here. The communication styles that most people are familiar with, the main 4 are here on our slide. The first is passive. The next is aggressive. The next is passive aggressive. And then the last one is assertive. So next to each one, I put and this is my opinion, I put another word which basically reflects the style and how the listener hears when this style is used. By the way, and I've been in business for 42 years. I've literally taught hundreds and hundreds of people how to be salespeople, which is very much around communicating and influencing. And one of the things I've always talked about when it comes to communication, the most important part of communication is the listener. The most important part of communication is what somebody hears, not necessarily what you say, but how you say it is a deep reflection on how they're going to hear it. So if you're passive, you're stuttering, you're hesitating, you're not confident, you're not sure of yourself, you're wringing your hands, you're looking down, you avert your gaze, you're sending a message of hesitancy. You're sending a message that doesn't necessarily reflect confidence. If you're aggressive, if you lean in, if you gesticulate a lot, you're moving your hands, you're pointing, you're trying to be dominant. And if you're not trying to be dominant, you're going to be perceived as dominant. If you're passive aggressive, it's kind of a little of both. It's considered indirect. Not really sure exactly what this person's getting at. What is it they're trying to convey? Are they trying to convey confidence? Are they trying to convey dominance? It makes it much more challenging for your listener. Last is assertive. And assertive is designed to portray confidence. There are some hand gestures. There is some intonation in the voice. You are projecting your voice in an effort to try to be viewed as confident, as authoritative. Now, each one of us uses all of these styles all the time. We use them in our personal lives. We use them in our professional lives. What's most important is you're going through this professionally is the last two bullets, is know your audience and know your strategy. So if one of my goals is to work with someone in a very collaborative way, I want to probably be assertive, but a little hesitant. I want to assert what I'm working on. When I say collaborative way, equal as equals. I want to portray confidence that I'm an authoritative figure in what I bring to the table. But I also want to make sure that they're not thinking, I'm not saying that what they bring to the table is not just as important. So knowing your audience and knowing your strategy are really, really important when you're just starting out on your communications journey. Now, before we go further, something I should have mentioned. I did mention it actually. We all use this stuff every day. The important thing one of the important things I want to convey is to be thoughtful in your approach to when you're using these techniques throughout the business day. Be thoughtful about it. Think about, I'm about to sit in front of a meeting, as you can see in the picture here. What is it I want to accomplish? What style of communication best suits that? Go into that with that thought in there. Keep in mind you need to be flexible, but be thoughtful about the communication style that you want to select to effectively ensure that you're looking to get the outcome that you want. We're now going to move to this concept of verbal and nonverbal communication. And for the next couple of slides, we're going to focus on the spoken word. Once we're done with those slides, we will move to the electronic, emails, texts, things of that nature, because they become such a critical part of the communication landscape. They cannot be ignored, and they're not as easy. Many of us, or most of us, all of us, have done spoken word and understand spoken word, less so with the written word, even though we do a lot of emails. But for the next few slides, we're going to stick strictly with verbal communication. So verbal communication, as it says there, is the use of the spoken word to convey messages, ideas, and information. Well, that part on the left side is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. But as we're doing that stuff, as we are working with others, whether it's in person or now electronically, all the non-verbal cues come into play. And there are a lot of them. This is not all of them. This is quite a few. First is the facial expression. If my facial expression conveys confusion, my brow is wrinkled. If it's joyful, I'm smiling. Whatever facial expression you have on, the person watching you is going to see that, and they're going to modify how they think, how they react, and how they act and behave based on your facial expression. You need to be aware of that. I can tell you, as a person who's been a salesman for over 40 years now, facial expressions are probably the most important part of nonverbal cues. And people who really get good at working a room, or I guess they call it emotional intelligence, they really spend a lot of time on learning and understanding facial expressions and how to react to them. Body language and gestures, obviously, this goes without saying. If I'm, everyone knows that when my hands are crossed, what's that conveying? Things of that nature. Tone, timing, and pace of speech. If I'm speaking very, very quickly, I'm trying to get this idea in, I'm going to lose people. People get distracted by that quick speech. It conveys fear. Try not to do it. Eye contact. We're going to do a whole slide on eye contact. Touch and proxemics. I recently saw an old Saturday Night Live skit with Judd, oh goodness, what's his last name? Judd, the guy from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Judd, the big tall guy who worked in the fish market. Saturday Night Live, when he was on Saturday Night Live 30 years ago, he did a thing about being a close speaker. And he got close when he was talking. And he got right in, really inside that I guess you would call it barrier that we all have, that we're comfortable when we're talking. And you could see when he did that, when he got that close, it made people very uncomfortable. It just puts them off immediately. Next is your physical appearance. I'm trying to convey today in this session confidence, professionalism. I want to be perceived as an authority figure. I want to be perceived as authentic. I'm wearing, at least what in our culture is a collared shirt and a jacket. Now, that's become passé. I get that. I'm also a tech guy, so that aspect has become somewhat passé. But physical appearance is important, like it or not. I'm not here to offer judgment on it, but physical appearance is important. Last is environmental factors. We'll talk more about that. But if I was talking to you today, actually I am talking to you today, and one of the things I'm trying to avoid is this. I don't know if you can see that. The sun is coming through the window here. I normally would do this closer, but when I do that, the sun shines on my face and reflects. Sorry, I got out of focus there. So I'm sitting back further. So those are the environmental factors. All of that stuff comes into play. It's a tremendous number of things that you have to think about as you're going through your business day and you're trying to communicate effectively and influence others to get the outcome that you're trying to get. All right, talked about eye contact. This is a really important concept related to communication. And these are some do's and don'ts. What does a lack of eye contact signal? I don't take you seriously. If you're speaking to me and I'm not looking at you, And when I'm not talking about I glance away, but if you're having a conversation with me and my focus is somewhere else, what you're telling me is you don't respect me. What you're telling me is that what I'm saying to you isn't important. All of these things need to be thought about as you're going through the communication journey. What does excessive staring do? That makes others uncomfortable. The third bullet is really, really powerful. One of the things that I used to teach when I taught different salespeople is I use this concept called steal with your eyes. Now, don't freak out. And I don't want you to go back and go, what the heck's he talking about? But back in the day, you used to be able to, when you visited someone and you were trying to talk to them about your product and trying to solve their problem with your solution, you would go to their office. You might get on an airplane, you might go personally and drive, but you would go into their organization. You would walk into their room where they worked all day, all worked, 5 days a week. And in there, you would see things. And you would see pictures. I can't show it. If I did, I'd have to get up. There's a picture on my far wall that I was given 30 years ago. It's Bugs Bunny. It's big. So there's a really big Bugs Bunny right on the wall over here. Right across from me is a Rolling Stones t-shirt from 1978. It was a concert I attended at JFK Stadium in Philadelphia. Pictures of my kids, my wife, both when they were children and graduating college. Pictures of fishing, some books that I've read, business books. Now I understand lots of people don't have offices now, they have cubes, but when someone walked into that facility, when someone walked into that office, they could use their eyes to steal a little bit about this person. This is an important concept, and I highly suggest you try to put that into practice as you go through your day, especially if you're meeting someone new. A great icebreaker. Oh, I saw a picture. Tell me about your kids. I see that you have a Stanford University diploma. When were you at Stanford? I realize this may have gone off the rails a little bit from eye contact, but I do believe very strongly that the concept of when you're trying to influence and work with others, your ability to connect with them using your eyes as a way to get information about them is extremely important. And I'm sure many of you who've dealt with salespeople, oh, I'm sorry, I'm way behind my pages. Let me turn a few pages, sorry. There we go. Many of you who've dealt with salespeople have had this happen. They walk into your office and the first thing they do is they ask you a question or two about the things that they've seen. I teasingly say that salespeople today, they have it so much better than when I was first breaking in, because now they have Facebook and LinkedIn and all kinds of other ways that people are displaying their interests and talking about things that they enjoy, that when I was younger and just breaking into the business, that didn't exist. You didn't have those tools, you didn't have that capability, but I digress. So eye contact. Last one there, rapid blinking. Rapid blinking is generally considered a sign of nervousness. It demonstrates fear, that you're uncomfortable. Just be aware of that. It's hard to be aware of that one in particular, but be aware of it. If you see it, if you see someone who's blinking a lot, what it's signaling to you is they're uncomfortable. There's fear. Be aware of that as you're going through your day with communication. All right. We're now going to move to the physical environment. Remember, I did say we're going to touch on electronic, I promise, because electronic is absolutely critical. So if you're trying to get a certain outcome and you're having communication with somebody, you want to create a positive condition when you're actually meeting. You want to arrange the environment to suit what you're trying to accomplish. So if I'm inviting someone into my office, I do have an office here where YouCompli is headquartered. It is, albeit very small, but it's an office. I have chairs in a couple of different places. I have one right across from me. and I have two right to my left. If I'm having a communication with somebody where I want us to be equals, I want us to be colleagues, I want us to be contemporaries. I'm not the CEO. I'm the guy who's just working together with you. I'm going to sit over here. I'm going to turn my chair to where it faces this person. If I'm trying to convey hierarchy, I'm trying to convey power, I want to convey to somebody that in this particular interaction, I'm higher or more powerful than them, I stay behind my desk. All of these things convey different nonverbal communications to each party in the communication. Reduce background noises. There's an offshoot here that I won't go off on too much. I just had this conversation over this weekend. And I had the conversation, not necessarily as it relates to background noises, but as it relates to distractions with the son of a gun. We've all had that, where you have background noises. I turned my phone off. I don't know if you can see that. The last thing I wanted to have happen while I was in this interaction, in this communication with each and every one of you, is to have this thing ringing. I turned it off. Something that not a lot of, I don't turn this off very often. So you want to make sure you're reducing background noises, you're reducing distractions. Behind me, you don't see a lot of pictures. We normally do have a background with our logo on it, but we weren't able to get that into place in time, which is fine. But you don't see there's not a lot back there. There's not a lot of distractions. If you're in a face-to-face setting, you don't want things to be noisy. You don't want awkward seating. You don't want to be seated too close, too far. If you're far away from somebody, you're basically signaling that this conversation is we're not going to get together and collaborate. We're going to be distant. So the environmental factors are absolutely important. Next, or last, with communication before we move to electronic, the key takeaway, and I know I didn't really touch on this, but this is really, I think, extremely important. Effective communication isn't about being the loudest voice, it's about being the clearest and most respectful. As compliance people, as quality people, you're often in a position of authority. You may be in a position of authority without power, but you're in a position of authority. So it is not uncommon in the experiences that I've had that I've seen people when they're in a position of authority try to exert a loud voice. I would suggest you try not to do that. Let's turn for just a moment to not the spoken word, the written word, and specifically electronic communication. I don't have a slide on this, but I do want to touch on it. I have been training salespeople, as I mentioned, for many, many years. And one of the things that I try to communicate to all of these salespeople and anyone else that I work with that I try to help in any way, shape, or form is it's important to try not to have a conversation via email. It is not a great form of communication to do that. I understand everyone's extraordinarily busy. I understand everybody is running around from this to this to this. And email and texting, the electronic form of communication, has become extraordinarily convenient, a great way to convey an idea quickly, get it out there, get it off your plate, and move on to the next thing. I'm not in any way slighting the necessity of email and the importance of using email. What I'm suggesting to you is conversation and communication is nuanced. Those nuances are more than just what's typed on the page. I'm guessing many of you have written emails and you have in your head a message that you tried to convey. That message, when it gets across to the reader, may or may not come across exactly how you wanted to convey it. They're going to put it through their filter. When they put it through their filter, they're going to come to a conclusion. That conclusion is going to influence how they interact and work with you. Please be thoughtful about this. I've worked with so many different people. I've received so many emails that when I've read through them, I got a specific message that when I had a chance to dig deeper and speak to the individual, it was not even remotely close to the message that was trying to be conveyed. Try, if you can, to have as few conversations over electronic communication as possible. I understand the necessity of it. If you're trying to convey nuance, tone, how your face is when you're speaking, if I'm concerned about something, I furrow my brow. If I'm questioning it, I have a questioned look. If I'm excited, the tone of my voice, when I go up, when I go down, if I'm speaking loudly, if I'm speaking quietly. All of these things are really, really hard to convey with simple capital letters and ampersands, and things of that nature. I just would highly recommend, I've seen so many activities get sideways because electronic communication was overly relied upon. That's just one man's opinion. Do with that as you wish. We are now going to move to influence, which is a critical concept when it comes to being a successful leader, is your ability to influence others and to get those people to work with you, collaborate with you, promote your ideas, you promote theirs, to build a team. It's almost impossible to do that without having the ability to influence others. You can see down the left side of this slide a whole list of things. I'm not going to go through each one of them. I'm going to just touch on one or two that I think are critically important. The first one I'm going to touch on is really the first two bullets, and it's trust and authenticity. In my opinion, it's really difficult and extremely challenging to influence somebody, almost impossible, if they don't trust you. People are inherently a little cynical, maybe. Some are, some are not. But trust is a critical component of influence. And the way you gain trust is by being authentic. When you're talking to someone, if you have a doubt, if you don't necessarily, in that next to the right, you see courage of conviction. If you don't have the courage of your conviction, be prepared and comfortable saying that. I have an opinion, but I'm not exactly sure if this is the right way to go. That's authenticity. That says to the people that you're working with that you're willing to express yourself openly and honestly and tell them and give them a green light to offer you constructive comment, to give you their impression, which may be different than yours. I think authenticity is extraordinarily important. Next is listening, down further the list. Listening, and there's concepts called active listening. Really, really important that you're an active listener. And the first concept of active listening is actually listening. This is something I have a bad habit of doing, especially with my lovely wife. She'll come to me and she'll say something to me, and the first thing I'll start to do before she's had a chance to get out is half of what she wanted to convey. I'm already thinking about how I want to answer her. I'm already formulating my answer. I've already formulated it. She hasn't finished what she said to me, and I've already decided this is how I'm going to answer her. She calls me on this all the time. I'm sure you noticed how I just got more into it. because it's something I hear about frequently. Active listening starts with actually listening, not thinking about and formulating your answer while that person's trying to convey the idea. So all of these are important, but authenticity and active listening are really, really critical concepts as it relates to being able to influence. On the other side, testing your skills. First one, can you own a room? Pretty self-explanatory. Are you comfortable walking into a room with your peers, with your colleagues, with senior leadership, and in a positive way, taking control of that room, conveying confidence without conveying authoritarianism and disregard for other people's opinion? Do you have a courage of your conviction? I mentioned earlier. Do you truly believe in what you're saying? It's really, really hard to be authentic if you don't believe. The last one, and I just looked at the watch and I want to make sure I leave it open for time. The last one there, can you read people and change your behavioral style to fit situation? We've all been involved in circumstances where we've been thrown a curveball. And that curveball, we have to have the ability when it's coming at us to say, uh-oh, something has changed here. And now that that change has happened, what am I going to do to influence it? I'll tell you a little story. This goes back many, many, many years. Before I went to college, I repossessed cars. I repossessed automobiles. I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Billy Joel made us famous. And there was a bank there that I worked repossessing automobiles. We had to repossess a car that was in Augusta, Georgia. So I got on an airplane and flew to Augusta, Georgia. I went to this place where it's out in a rural setting in rural Augusta, Georgia. And I knocked on the door. The gentleman answered the door, hostile, angry, holding a gun. He said to me, "What can I do for you?" And I told him I was there to try to sell Bibles, would be interested in buying a Bible. I saw and I read the room, and I changed my behavioral style to fit the situation. I left, we called the sheriff, I let them handle it, because it obviously went beyond what I, as a 19-year-old kid, was prepared to do. But you have to be able to read people and change your behavioral style to fit the situation. So, how can you use influence to change the perception of compliance and quality within your organization? The first concept is getting a seat at the table. And this isn't easy. This is not a simple thing. Getting a seat at the table from the quality perspective, when I say a seat at the table, I mean within senior leadership, whether it's at the compliance committee, boards, things of that nature. Getting a seat at the table is a very, very challenging concept. If you're on this webinar, it means you want a seat at that table. And that's what you're working to get. And I applaud you for that. By the way, when you get there, be prepared. Do as many of these as you can do. Do webinars, get educated, get ready. Second, no one's going to invite you there. You have to do it for yourself. You have to make yourself indispensable to leadership. Find someone who's currently on that committee. Sit with them, talk to them, learn about the challenges they have being on the committee, and find out if there's a way that you can help. I just noticed the time again, I'm running behind. The last thing I'm going to point out on this particular slide, I think this is critically important, and it's something everybody can do. Bottom right-hand corner of that last of the slide. Consider joining a local board in your neighborhood, where you live, at your church, wherever you worship, a local food bank, whatever you're involved in, whatever you're into, Cub Scouts. Consider joining that board. Get a sense for what goes on in a board meeting. No greater way to learn than by doing. And a lot of us look at boards and they go, I can't get on a board. Trust me when I tell you, if you pick up the phone and you call your local food bank or a hospice or whatever it happens to be, and you say, I really want to get involved, I bring years of experience, or even I'm brand new, I bring engagement and excitement, whatever it may be, and you say to them, I want to get involved and I want to join your board, you will find one pretty quickly that will take you. And then you'll get a sense and understanding of how a board operates. What's the speak? How do they talk? Why do they vote? When do they vote? Really great way to get experience in terms of leadership. Hopefully, if you're on here, you want to move from the concept of messenger to influencer. The middle step is partner. You have to become a partner with the folks that you're working with if you want to become an influencer within your organization. Here are 3 types of phrases that, even if you're not necessarily in the compliance function, if you're in compliance for quality, you've probably said these more than once. You may not have said them exactly this way. The first one, we have to. We have to do this. We have to do that. We have to this. The way to frame and phrase that from a communication perspective is, here's how we can. Here's how we can do this. Here's how we can do that. You're bringing the solution to the table and presenting it in a way that's much more palatable. Next, the regulation says you want to be authoritative. Sorry, I'm behind. I just noticed my pages. I always get lost here. You want to be authoritative. Well, the regulation says we have to. The regulation says that. Another way of saying that is, our organization benefits when? Our organization will benefit when we do this. Our organization will benefit when we do that. We'll gain this kind of benefit if we operate in this manner. If we modify our process, this is what will happen. Last, you're not compliant. Another way of framing that is, let's align this with our standards. How do we align this activity with our current high ethical, highly compliant standards? Using these types of messages, phrasing them in this way, changes how people perceive you. It changes, you become a solution provider. I recently was at the CIHQ conference in Texas, and I did a talk there in front of the whole group. And I talked about how, as a salesperson for 40+ years, my job is to be a solution provider. I provide solutions. I'm really proud of that. I feel really good about the fact that I've been providing solutions to people for over 40 years. I've been solving people's problems. Everybody on this call is exactly the same. You're a solution provider. So think about how you're phrasing things and how you're presenting yourself and presenting these concepts. Solutions. I talked about KPIs. These are extremely hard to measure. But I truly do believe if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So I've come up with 3 ways. There are more, but I've come up with 3 ways that each and every one of you can start measuring your ability to be an effective communicator and influence outcomes. The first one is response latency, which is the average time it takes for leadership to respond to requests. All right, so on the right, why does that matter? Why does the average time it takes for leadership to respond to requests matter? Well, faster, if someone's responding to you faster, it indicates that the messages are clear, they're trusted, and they're prioritized. A great way to track this is timestamps from email, tasking systems if you have them. YouCompli happens to be a tasking system related to regulation, not a plug, or meeting follow-ups. I threw this goal out. This is not a goal that you need to adopt. I would like to see, if I'm doing this, I would like to see response latency be no more than 48 hours. Next, the percent of first draft acceptance. These are the number of proposed policies and corrective actions and things of that nature that are accepted without major edits. without not a lot of major editing. Okay, well, why does that matter? High acceptance means communication is persuasive, well aligned, and seen as practical. Yes, this is something I can do. I don't necessarily need to push back on it. Easy to track the number of first draft proposals approved versus revised. You can also track the number of revisions if you wish. The goal is to increase it over time, showing improved credibility and influence. Pretty simple. The percent of first draft acceptance needs to go up. Last, oops, I hit the button earlier, is meeting the decision time. It's the time between when you introduce a topic and a decision or implementation was started. Why it matters: faster cycles indicate discussions are clear, data-driven, and aligned with operation and organizational priorities. You track again by timestamps and decision logs and meeting notes or those project trackers. And obviously that last one, you want to shorten the time. The less time you have between when you're meeting and a decision is what you're after there. Let me check my watch. All right, I'm doing well now. I'm back on track. I mentioned some bonus superpowers. This is them. I think I talked about this in the CIHQ. In my 40 years of training people, these are the things, these two concepts are the things that I try to focus on more than anything else. And this is for salespeople and marketing people and the folks who create our content and our software development team. These are bonus superpowers: empathy and intellectual curiosity. If you want to solve someone's problem, you have to care about it. If you don't care about it, when they talk to you about it, when they come to you with it, they're going to see that, they're going to feel that. We've all dealt with it. You have to truly care. You're in the healthcare field. By your nature, you have empathy. This one should be pretty simple. The second one is a little harder, and that's intellectual curiosity. This is not an easy soft skill to develop. The way you develop that is when somebody says something to you. If in your mind it creates a question, you ask the question. You don't hold it. You don't keep it to yourself. This is really a critical concept if you want to help use communication to influence people, is intellectual curiosity. When you're asking someone a question about the problem they bring to you, or what they do, not necessarily a problem, or where they live, or how they spent their day, you're conveying to them that you care authentically and you want to hear what they have to say. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. Intellectual curiosity and empathy are two bonus superpowers. And if Michelle asks me to do another webinar, I might do them just on those two. Okay, time for a little homework. I really would like each and every one of you to apply these practices. Pick some soft skill. You can pick whichever one you want. I have a list of them there. There's others, go online. Storytelling, the way I began. Empathy, active listening. Don't formulate an answer until they're done. Pair it with a situation. Pair one of these soft skills with an actual situation that you're involved in over this next week. And then track one outcome. Actually sit down and think about it. Write it up. How did this work? Did it have an impact? Did it not have an impact? This is your homework from this webinar. Our last slide before we're going to open this up to questions. Actually, let's open it up to questions. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. But the last slide, I love this Theodore Roosevelt comment. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. If you want to be an influencer, a leader, someone who can take an idea, a concept, a vision, and get people behind it, and get people walking in lockstep related to it. They have to believe you care. Your communication builds that culture, and it happens one conversation at a time. So pick one conversation to lead with influence instead of enforcement. That's it. I did pretty good. I have 10 minutes left. Are there any questions out there, Michelle?
Well done, Jerry. As a reminder, you can type your questions using the question pane, or as Jerry mentioned, the chat. I've got both of them open to monitor. When typing, please identify the name of your organization, so it gives Jerry some insights on any special considerations that need to be addressed. And of course, be sure your question is worded clearly. Our first question comes from Kendall in Iowa. Is there a difference in how communication and influence are applied in leadership versus team roles?
Is there a difference between leadership? Yes, there's definitely a difference. When you're communicating with leadership, it's important to focus on the why. Our organization is investing in compliance because it protects our patients and it maintains our credibility as an ethical organization within Pittsburgh, which is where I happen to be. So it's the why. You know, we're investing in compliance because it protects patients, and the why. So that's the why. If you're working with folks who are in different departments, operationally, whether it be clinical or non-clinical, you want to focus on the how. You can certainly talk about the why, but the how is really important. Here's a new regulation came out related to the CMS. And here's what this means for us and how we believe we might want to change our processes to reflect this new opportunity. So it's really focusing on the how versus the why. Senior people, why we're doing this. Less senior people, how we're doing this. Does that make sense? Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle, I was going to say, does that make sense? But I understand it was asked by someone in Iowa, so hopefully that's helpful.
Excellent.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir. What are some practical tips for improving listening skills in a fast-paced work environment? That one's from me.
I talked about it earlier. First, actually listen. Don't begin to formulate your answer while that person is conveying their idea or question or concept to you. Be an active listener first. Next, pause. When you're answering somebody, even if you know the answer, pause. Take a second, take two. Often you may not know the answer. Take some time to formulate that answer. Pause. Pause. When you pause, it throws off the concept of thoughtfulness, respect. You're giving this your full attention. Next, look for what's not being said. Nonverbal stuff. Look for what's not being said. And then last, and I can't help this is the salesperson to me, you always want to end with a next step. Okay, this has been great. What do we do next? Where do we go from here? Do we have a plan? We don't have a plan, let's get a plan in place. Any other questions?
There are no further questions in the queue. Jerry, thank you for putting your email up there. That was my next recommend. If anyone has questions for Jerry, please reach out to him or find him on LinkedIn. I know he's very active there as well. We appreciate your time here today, Jerry, very much.
Thank you again, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. I hope this was helpful. And you can take some of these techniques and ideas and concepts, embed them into what you do and how you do it, and be more effective.
Outstanding. I'll stay on until the attendees drop down.
Michelle, do you want me to stay on as well?
You don't have to, sir. No thanks.
Okay.
I just, in case.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks very much. Have a good one.